How did you get coffee from the police?
Well, not the police. Someone has brought it for us, but the police won't let them in. So the police are now becoming our little messengers between us. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. We're on the bridge. They're not letting anyone else come on, which makes no sense. Because if we're already
That's
on the
what
bridge,
it sounded like Saturday in Toronto at an anti-Israel protest on the Highway 401 overpass at Avenue Road and Wilson. You've probably all seen the clip by now. It shows a couple of Toronto police officers doing what looks like delivering a takeout carton of Tim Hortons coffee and cups and accessories and food to a pro-Palestinian protester who had come to unfurl flags and chant "From the river to the sea" over the Canadian highway overpass, as they've been doing each weekend to protest Israel's war against Hamas that has devastated much of Gaza. The coffee video has prompted a lot of sarcasm and puns. One columnist called it double standards for policing protests, which have been going on for 3 months now, since October 7th, when Hamas terrorists slaughtered 1,200 Israelis and took 240 hostage, and Israel launched a retaliatory war. But even though Toronto police later explained they were just trying to manage a dynamic situation and keep tension low, and the police chief Myron Demkew has since apologized for the impact of the coffee gesture and has ordered an immediate review, it still prompted anger in the Jewish community and from the politicians who represent the area, who want assurances the police are doing everything they can to stop what they call lawlessness, intimidation, and harassment.
Do we want a city that's respectful, that's law-abiding, where people can come here from all over the world and escape world conflict zones, raise their family in peace and security? Or do we want lawlessness, where people can go about and do whatever they want, scream whenever they want, be as hateful as they please, and there are no consequences?
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Monday, January the 8th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, and we're sponsored by Metropia. Toronto police have reported anti-Semitic hate crimes being at the highest in at least 10 years. With close to 300 protests going on in the streets since October 7th. Jewish businesses and cafes have been targeted, these overpass demonstrations, and swarmings of shopping malls and the railway station. And on Wednesday, a Jewish-owned delicatessen called the International Delicatessen Foods Grocery, or IDF, was set on fire and spray-painted with the words "Free Palestine." Crime Stoppers has issued a $50,000 reward now for any information leading to the arrest of people who did it. But neighbors in the area of the main flashpoint, the overpass protest at Avenue Road and the 401, are fed up and feeling intimidated, and they want all levels of government to do something. We have several interviews today, including the Solicitor General Michael Kerzner and City Councillor James Pasternak. But first, I want to bring in the CJN's news editor Lila Sarick to set the scene. She attended the overpass protest on the weekend. What did you see? Describe what it looked like when you went.
I live in that neighborhood. The road from the neighborhood to get on down to Avenue Road was blocked off with police tape. When I first got there were Palestinian protesters on both sides of the bridge, which is a bridge that overlooks the 401. Underneath, there were lots and lots of people honking. On the bridge, there were 30, 40 perhaps, people waving Palestinian flags, playing loud music over a loudspeaker, setting off red smoke bombs. And then, after quite a while, and then there was a small group of people who live in the neighborhood who were gathered at the foot of the bridge watching to see what was going to happen. The cars were not allowed to go on the bridge, so you couldn't get out of our neighborhood by going on the bridge. It was all blocked off, so people would get there and they'd have to turn around and take a fairly lengthy detour. After a while, finally, the police got the protesters to move onto one side of the bridge, still overlooking the overpass, and the cars were able to go through. I spoke to a number of people. This is not the first time. This has started happening before Christmas. I spoke to a couple of people, and everyone in the neighborhood, I would say, is both fairly alarmed and really angry that this is happening. I spoke to one woman whose daughter was trying to get home, and the police actually had to drive her just across the bridge. They didn't drive her home, but they dressed to drive her across the bridge, an 18-year-old girl, because they were, worried for her safety. I spoke to another man who said, he doesn't like his kid. There's a McDonald's. He's on the south side of the bridge. There's a McDonald's. He doesn't even want his kid to go to the McDonald's right now, just south of these protests. So people are really alarmed, and they're also really furious that this is happening. They say it's a accident waiting to happen. What happens if one of those flags falls onto the 401 and there are cars going 120 kilometers an hour? As well as the fact that our neighborhood is blocked off. If there was a emergency, how would a fire truck or an ambulance get through? They'd have to take this very long, circuitous way to get into the neighborhood.
Okay, Lila, so you were at the protest on Saturday. You saw the latest iteration. You did not see the Tim Hortons coffee take 12, the big jugs that you can bring being delivered, but you were there at that same protest. What can you tell me about how the police engaged or the sort of relationship with the protesters? What did you see? Was it, riot gear and aggressive, or was it more calm than that?
I'm on the neighborhood side, and the coffee handoff must have happened on the busy street side. So that's why we can't really see, and the bridge arches over, so we can't really see over to the far side of the bridge. But on my side, on the neighborhood side, there's buses that are parked blocking the streets. There's a ambulance waiting. There are maybe a dozen police cars, and certainly many more officers than that, and probably a police bus or something. The police are pretty, they're not wearing riot gear. They're wearing their regular uniforms. They're just kind of standing. There's a median that runs down the middle of this road, and they stand on the median and try and get the protesters to go to one side eventually. And then they stand on the median in between people who are pedestrians, a few folks carrying Israeli flags. They're pretty, I'd say, impassive.
So what are the signs? Are there any signs with anti-Semitic or hate speech words, or did you hear chanting that is death to Jews, or what is it like?
The chants that I heard were free, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. A sign that bizarrely said Israel should move to Florida, which makes no sense.
It actually kind of does.
Perhaps, maybe this time of year. It was really cold Saturday. It was pretty cold and windy. We were all pretty freezing, which I suppose is why they wanted hot coffee on their side.
How many protesters were there when you were there, did you think?
40. I'd say about 40.
And how many police?
So maybe about a dozen or so on the median, perhaps more. And then there's lots of police sitting in cars at either end, taking down the police tape, putting up police tape. So certainly a good number of police officers.
So it'd probably be about an even ratio all told.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And this has gone on for, weeks.
Why do you think it's considered a Jewish neighborhood? What is there?
So there are two synagogues, a Reform synagogue, a conservative synagogue, that are accessed by my neighbor right in that area. It's not a exclusively Jewish neighborhood, but it's certainly a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. There's a Chabad with a childcare on the far side. There's actually a Jewish Orthodox girls' school in that neighborhood. So there's certainly a number of institutions just right that you would need to actually drive through this neighborhood to access. And then a little bit farther west on Bathurst Street, where there is no exit from the highway, is the heart of the Jewish community with yeshivas and schools and everything else. I would say the mood is that people are so frustrated with the police and every level of political. We are represented by both conservatives and liberals in our riding, federally, provincially, and municipally. Everyone is just so frustrated with every level of elected official that this is continuing to go on. And I think people have lost faith with their elected officials.
All right, Lila, so we're going to bring in the city councillor for the area, James Pasternak. Welcome to the CJN Daily.
Good to be here, Ellen.
What are you going to be doing this week to address some of the concerns you have and that the residents of Kars have also been telling you?
This incitement almost always leads to violence. And all the warning signals were there. And sadly, a Jewish-owned store, which has absolutely nothing to do with Gaza and the conflict in the Middle East, was firebombed with graffiti on the front, Free Palestine. And, of course, this is another example where people are starting to believe that we live in a lawless city, where people can go about doing whatever they want, whenever they want, boycotting businesses, screaming in front of businesses that are Jewish-owned, yelling Zionist boycott, blocking ambulance routes, going on 401 overpasses and creating a dangerous situation, storming into shopping malls during the Christmas season. So people seeing this, see a city in decline, a city that is increasingly lawless, that's out of control, and isn't governed by the rule of law. And that is the greatest danger we have here in Toronto, because we've always been a safe, welcoming city. And we're starting to lose that.
Specifically, this past weekend, Toronto went viral with the police officer seen to be carrying Tim Hortons to the protesters. When you saw this, what was your reaction?
Well, I was shocked because you have a situation in which these protesters, these angry mobs, are defying police at every opportunity. They're baiting police by continually going back on this 401 crossover. And there has to be barriers between the mob and police. And to see police sort of handing out coffee and being social, and this is all a fun winter activity, sends the wrong signal. It was a terrible image for our police services and what the community saw. Now, I don't know that officer. I don't know whether he was really thinking through the optics. So I want to be somewhat fair to that individual. But what it did was it broke down barriers between police and the protesters. And what it did was, are you our buddy? Or are you enforcing the law? Are you socializing with us and being chum? Or are you keeping the peace? And it created a very unbalanced, inappropriate interaction between people who have been calling for the genocide of Jews and officers handing out coffee to them.
So the police chief put out a statement on Sunday apologizing for any confusion and the impact that this had, because he said, regardless of intent, the impact was one of confusion on the community, and that he's asked for an immediate review of the command strategies, and that, they're going to keep keeping the community safe for as long as it takes. And we're doing our best. And we had, he said, there were 30 protests on Sunday that they had to deal with. What do you think needs to be done? You're going to meet with him when?
So we're meeting Monday night. We had a Jewish community liaison group going for last couple of years, well before October 7th, because this has hit a crisis point. Because there's a feeling that these angry mobs can do whatever they want with no consequences. Now, there was a spike up of arrests in November, and I've been tracking them closely, and that's encouraging, because what's the rule of law if you have no consequences? We've seen dozens of federal, provincial statutes violated over the last few months, plus dozens of different municipal bylaws violated. If there are no consequences to that, it'll just get worse.
Ottawa handed out noise bylaws when they had protests a couple of weeks ago, and it was hefty fines to try to discourage this. And I wonder if you are supportive of such a thing, using municipal bylaws, if there can't or won't make the other charges stick.
We have a hate rallies policy at the City of Toronto, which gives city staff and police services wide range of options to stop these kind of angry mobs. Trespass orders, noise violations. We can issue tickets. There seems to be none of this. What Ottawa started doing was enforcing its noise bylaws, which is low-hanging fruit. And that's an easy way to discourage this kind of flagrant violation of our bylaws. You see, what people have to understand is that often people say, well, what's the point? They're out the next day. The judicial system is weak. We can't get anywhere with this. So I say, fine. I say, arrest them. Let them spend the night at the police station. Give them a summons to appear at a future court date. There's going to be either the charge is going to be dismissed. Let them spend a day in court. Let them go hire a lawyer, take a day off of work, explain to everybody that they've been charged with an offense, and let's see how they like it. We can't just not do anything because the judicial system is weak, and they may get off with a slap on the wrist, or the charges will be dismissed. Let the police do their work. And we have to support police. And I would say in their defense that we have a very under-resourced police service. With 4,800 officers for a city of 3 million, it is a very small force. And they have to do the best they can.
Do they need a permit to do these demonstrations? And the Jewish community too. Of course, like there's a big one coming in Nathan Phillips Square. But what about these overpass ones or the Yonge Street ones, whatever?
So there's a gray area. For protests and rallies, you technically don't need a permit, but you have to register with police. I think that's a deeply flawed system, and we have to fix it. But that protests and rallies doesn't allow you to block to jump on the Gardiner Expressway, to block ambulance routes out of hospitals on University Avenue, to deliberately go on a 401 overpass to try and distract drivers to your cause.
So they have to register, but the police don't have to say yes or no. They just have to let them know for information, but there's no, you can't, this is no good. Like no one can say no to any protest is what you're saying. As long as they register that it's happening, there's no one to stop it.
There's no one to stop it, but the behavior at those protests is where you can stop it. Once they start breaking a number of different bylaws and blocking vehicles and using amplified noise without a permit, and swarming stores because of the ethnicity or the religion of the owner. These violate...
That's where you can move. But what about like Idle No More or some of these other, like the truckers? They had injunctions brought down to stop them because it was federally regulated transport, such as the train. Can that not be done by the city to stop? Or is that the federal or OPP that gets injunctions?
Well, it's a very good question because Union Station was swarmed at one point, which is critical federal infrastructure, rail, subway, Metrolinx, GO train, and very little was done, and they were told to leave. The swarming of the shopping malls, that's private property. It was trespassing, and they could have issued trespass warning letters or filed trespass charges. The security just chased them out of there. Which
is bottom line for the residents of that area, including Lila, and Michael Kerzner, and maybe you. I don't know how close you live.
I don't live in there, no.
Okay. So basically you're saying it's going to go on.
We are going to explore every opportunity to keep people off those overpasses. We're going to be working through the Ministry of Transportation. We're going to be working through the City of Toronto municipal licensing and transportation divisions. And that's what I'm going to be working on this week. We have to keep people off those overpasses. It's a deliberate, careless, reckless, dangerous attempt to distract drivers to a cause. And we just can't have that in the city.
And joining us now from Toronto is Michael Kerzner, the Solicitor General of Ontario. Welcome to the CJN Daily.
Hi, Ellen. Great to be with you.
What do you make of what has been happening at Avenue Road in Wilson, and what do you want done, if anything? What can you do?
Well, thanks, Ellen. I appreciate being with you and Lila today. Our government's been very clear. Hate has no place in our Ontario. Hate is toxic to our democracy. I've spoken up loudly, as Premier Ford has, as Minister Ford has, as our government and caucus has. And quite honestly, it is unacceptable that any community in Ontario should be subject to intimidation or harassment.
So is this intimidation, harassment, hate speech, or is this free speech?
Well, again, Ellen, as your listeners know, there's different levels of government that have to work together. There's the municipal levels across Ontario. There's the federal government as well. Different levels of government have different jurisdictions. The role that the provincial government has is to set the tone and to provide the oversight and the legislation for public safety.
What are the things that has crossed the line for you? You said toxic.
Well, you know, what crosses the line is intimidation and harassment, and hate has no place here. So whether we're speaking out against the arson attack, which is under investigation at the IDF deli on Steeles, part of York Centre, whether it's speaking out against other type of protesters that are offensive and hurtful. We've been very clear on this. It's very important, again, that we understand we do not direct the operations of any police service in Ontario, the OPP, First Nations police services, or the Toronto Police Service. And I've got every confidence that the command leadership of Toronto Police will make the best decisions to keep our community safe. The command centers on Bathurst Street have been proof positive of just how concerned Toronto Police Services are to the Jewish community specifically.
Hey, so this incident happened like a block east of where that command center is. What about the fact that it's on a dangerous overpass? I know you're not Minister of Transportation, but my colleague Lila Sarick, she saw smoke bombs in red, and people can't even get out of their neighborhood because the police have to block it off because it's not safe. How did these police command posts do anything? I mean, if they're a block away, why is this allowed to happen? What do you want? What do you want done?
Well, the purposes of the command posts in part are to provide a presence and an easy way for people to feel that they can engage with the police services, and it's proven to be very helpful. I'm really a frequent visitor myself because I go in to say thank you. But you're quite right. We don't want to have any portion of our city cordoned off that they can't have free passage through in and out of their communities.
We saw this viral video of this police officer helping to deliver hot coffee from Tim Hortons across the cordon. When you heard about this, what did you think?
I personally would not have done it that way. The protesters have kind of become more sophisticated, which started as a protest down at the U.S. consulate and then moved to the Israeli consulate, and what was outside of Sydney Smith Hall at St. George at the U of T have morphed into different things. And I know that Toronto Police Services is continuing to update, their response plans. But, I just want to go back to something that's very important. Hate has no place here. What does this mean? It means that the provincial government, with the support of Minister Michael Ford's ministry, has provided a substantial amount of money to
$25 million, we know.
$25 million that is being applied for by many, many Jewish institutions, as an example, to help combat hate. Minister Ford and the Premier and myself have been very active in promoting applying for this grant program, which has been very, very successful. Our government has an absolute zero tolerance on hate. And we've shown it by the motions that we've introduced in the legislature, which called the attack on October the 7th a terrorist attack on a democratic country. We also passed a second motion to censor a member of the legislature. So our government has been acting.
And Holocaust education, you forgot about that, expanding Holocaust education. We know that's bigger things, but in terms of
the Holocaust education and the support of the Toronto Holocaust Museum, but
correct.
really, Ellen, it is setting a tone.
Understood, and I appreciate that.
We must.
I got to interrupt you there because you've said it a couple of times, and I appreciate that. But I want to know what your constituents are telling you, because, like you said, hate has no place. We set the tone, but meanwhile, they can't get across a bridge. Police are delivering hot coffee to protesters that are saying anti-Israeli and anti-Jewish things in Jewish neighborhoods, which you called yourself toxic. So as this MPP for that area, there's a disconnect between what you're saying and what's on the ground, tachlis.
Well, what I'm saying is I find it unacceptable. I find the intimidation unacceptable. I find the concerns of the residents of Armour Heights very, very serious. And I also have been very responsive to speaking to our residents, to listening to them, and to reminding them, Ellen, that my wife and I and our kids live there as well. So it's not like we're speaking without understanding where this is taking place. We have to have confidence in our police command leadership and the Toronto Police Service to have a response plan evolve that will ensure we have community safety. I have that confidence. And in part, Ellen, and you've touched on it earlier, I'll be speaking today with the Big 12 police chiefs and command leaders from across the province so that we understand the nature of the type of protests in different cities across Ontario, that we understand what are the best practices that they have developed to provide the response, and how the police services, Ellen, have been working collaboratively with the local municipal bylaw enforcement people, as an example. So by calling together this, I'll be traveling also, Ellen, in a week across Ontario to have further conversations on the rise of hate and what is being done by the local police services on it. So, my eyes are wide open. I am very, very concerned by it. Our premier is concerned by it.
Okay, so if you don't have any direct day-to-day operational influence, as you said, on the police in Toronto or York Region, but in the meantime, how long are the community members, including you and your family, supposed to put up with this?
Well, again, I don't want anybody living in fear in their community, but I believe this is an evolving story. It's not just what people see. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. It is a very sophisticated network of public safety professionals, and I've got confidence in them to come up with a plan and a strategy that will ensure that it's not only that they say we should feel safe, but that we will be feeling safe and that we are feeling safe. We are not living in a vacuum. There is a tremendous amount of dialogue that takes place absolutely every day. And our government has been clear. I'll say it again. We will not tolerate hate in our communities. It is toxic, and no community should feel intimidated to go about their lives, to take their kids to school, which they will do today, Ellen. Today's Monday. They're going to do it today, to see them back home safely, to play and to pray. And nobody should feel that those rights have been taken away from them.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. We'll end the show talking a little bit about what Lila mentioned earlier, which is that every Sunday at Bathurst and Shepherd, just a short distance away from the overpass, a small group of Jewish people come out holding Israeli flags and stage a peaceful rally. And on Sunday, there was a larger one with a car parade of maybe 80 cars joining them. We'll have the audio for you to end the show. But in the meantime, why not write to us? Let me know what you think should be done and what's happening where you live across Canada. I'm at ebessner@thecjn.ca. Thanks for listening to the CJN Daily.
How could you love Israel? Right. How could you love peace? Am Yisrael Chai, Od Avinu Chai.